I'll be there.
你在这儿吧。你说。
So what is this? Could I ask what the music is?
That's Michel Castelletti's work, Shift.
So that was one of the first questions.
So can you use a mic?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of think.
We've got music.
Yeah, once the music is on.
Yes, I'm going to turn it off.
Okay. So what the question that I wanted to ask, so thinking about, so the topic is yinyang and femininity, masculinity, whether or not those two things should be aligned, but what seems to me useful about the idea of yinyang is the way that it provides a metaphor for thinking across media, so that if shadow is yin, there may be things in music that align with shadow metaphorically or in the way that you think about it, and also with light. And so I was just wondering how that maybe plays into your practice as a composer and as a conductor.
Do we want to use a mic, or I can feel? I think they want to use a mic.
Oh, yeah.
So actually, that was the soundscape. There was, of course, visuals on top of that, which was projection mapping, which with lots of lights and shadow in between, which is why I think you liked it. So the idea, of course, there is. I think in everything that we do, I believe that there's always yin yang, not necessarily thinking of it as yin yang, but always as contrast or relationships or space and material, or material and immaterial, or in music, silence and music without the sound, without silence, then sound has a very different meaning. So I think in everything that we do, whether we're painting, whether we're composing, whether I'm curating, I've just come from my country where I actually did a massive exhibition on chiaroscuro, based on chiaroscuro. So of course light and darkness. So I think in everything that we do there is that duality. Now, whether we call it yin yang or whether we don't know that it's yin yang, but we're still there. I think that is what gives us a way of presenting things in totality. And I think without one, the other doesn't exist. Whether we call it feminine or masculinity or whatever you want to call it, but even if it is space and non-space, if I want to call it that, I think it's always there.
And do you think of that as in gendered terms, usually in your own practice, or not really?
No, I don't. I'm actually quite. I don't believe that being feminine. If you're going to use gender in the term of gender that we usually subscribe to, or ascribe a meaning to, I don't think feminine equals one thing and masculine equals another. I think there's a fluidity there, but the contrast is always there, irrelevant of whether you call it masculine or feminine. If something is liquid and something is solid, or if something is light and something is dark, but I don't assign masculinity to one and femininity to the other. I really enjoyed the space, the white for the feminine side, if you like, and the darkness for the masculine side. I did an exhibition with a fantastic German sculptor, Johannes von Stumm, where I chose sculptures which combined the material with the immaterial, and the sculpture was actually made by the space rather than by the solidness. And I loved that, and that's
And I thought that when looking at Leilei's work, both here and also I was at the museum today and I was looking at one of your paintings, that in a way, what is, and I sort of wonder again if you think about this in terms of yin and yang, or if you just think of it in terms of technique, so that you create bodies from. I mean, we've said that whiteness is masculine, but you also, the blankness on the paper is also shu, it's emptiness. And so, but I wondered how much you thought about that in philosophical terms, or if it's literally just, in order to create a body in monochrome ink, it has to be white if you're going to give it depth.
Yeah, very interesting question. Yeah, but that's because I think that yin and yang will sometimes keep changing each other, change the position. For example, when I teach or lecture, when I teach people the landscape painting, for example, yeah, we say, okay, today we do the waterfall, and some people just straight away do a few lines. I say, this is not a waterfall. This is spaghetti mental. Right. I say, what do you do waterfall? I said, waterfall, we won't do it. It will come out itself. Right? You do the cliff on this side and do cliff on this side. And then the space is a waterfall. You put a few dots. Right? And then build up the mountain and leave a space. We say 山欲高，云雾锁其腰. If you want to mountain high, you put a mist belt in the middle, and then you put some mountain, but underneath make it very very soft, disappears. That become mist. But waterfall come down, become a stream, and put a stone there and flow into there. Put a stone there, flow in there. All of the sky, the mist, the waterfall, the stream, the river, we don't do anything. By doing the mountain, the trees, the rocks, that's the way. That's what Lao Tzu says, 知其白，守其黑，为天下事, which means we understand white, but we manage the black. This is the system of the whole universe. But in the practical, sometimes I do that. But in my some work, I make the opposite. Before the way we say 记白当黑, I would like to say 记黑当白. I calculate black as white. So it depends on what you emphasize. I did put a picture because we didn't have enough time. They're too new to contrast. One dark background, one bright background. And then next one, there is a landscape. 五代画家 called 巨然, very, very important, a snow view. On the snow on the mountain, they didn't do anything. But we just by wash background and the snow come out. That is a minute. We can find the link from tradition. But this is why we say sometimes we're not quite really leading by the philosophy. I have to do that. It just naturally come out.
And it's more of a critical sort of response on what emerges from practice than it is necessarily what's guiding how you work. As in, so it's a critical reflection on what you do practically, as opposed to what you do practically being guided by the philosophical ideas.
When I paint, I don't think that much. But when I'm not painting, I read books.
Yeah. And so then, if we're thinking about the application of practice and theory, one of the questions that I had in thinking about the topic of today's talk being about yin-yang, and this is a question, and that was then transposed into English as masculinity, femininity. So, and that's a translation question, and it's also a philosophy question. So I wanted to ask the two of you, as you are philosophers and you work across cultures, is the relationship of philosophical ideas to social realities and to practice. So when we use the idea of yin-yang as, if we think about it as masculinity and femininity, in traditional, what I've read in traditional Chinese philosophy, in the I Ching, for instance, in some of the sort of commentaries, yang is defined as noble and as high and as male, and the yin is defined as base and ignoble and female. And that obviously comes from a kind of patriarchal social practice. So then, how does bringing that discussion into a new cultural context or a different cultural context, both a Western one and also a modern Chinese one where there is more where things are not as they once were. But how do those ideas relate and change when you're moving them across cultures and time?
First of all, I'm glad many things that have been spoken so far, the relationship between Chinese medicine and Chinese philosophy, and Chinese philosophy and many other aspects of practical intellectual life and reflection, and widening the scope rather than constricting it to one practice of philosophy with a tradition. And in China, there are several practices of philosophy with different traditions, and you can't latch on one figure, even a founding figure, such as Confucius or Lao Tzu or Taoism, and say that's the true Chinese philosophy, either true Confucian or true Taoist. They're all in flux and change, and of course, flux and change is one of the key notions of how to understand the world, how to understand art, how to understand ourselves and our societies, our language, where yin and yang is a matter not of dichotomy and opposition so much as a kind of continuum rather than cutting up. We cut up for purposes, but the underlying reality is one of flux and energy being the basic notion coming from a whole range of Chinese medicine, philosophy, and others, social life, practice, ethics, art. Also, in early pre-Han Chinese philosophy, there were those who thought that music would be the art which would be most fundamental. But if you understand the notion, that's not excluding other aesthetic forms, including painting, and certainly dance, literature, poetry. And particularly if we look at poetry and music as being central, they are filled with ambiguity rather than clear and distinct meaning. So Western philosophy, going back well before Descartes, looking at precise meanings of terms was fundamental. And maybe that's worthwhile, but it can be over-exaggerated. And one of the over-exaggerations said we can't make any sense of what's going on in Chinese thought. It's not really thinking. Well, that's no longer the case, and the idea of approaching everything that we take to be important in life, in art, in ethics, in politics, in medicine, in performance, has this notion of flux being brought into a certain order through dynamic processes. So that is, I think, very fundamental to understanding a wide range of Chinese traditions. And if you look at the history of art in particular, and how it's related to calligraphy, I know that Leilei thinks that the way to become an artist is to start with calligraphy. And that you can then imagine or recognize the different forms of calligraphy, some of which is absolutely spontaneous. You don't think in advance. You sit, you contemplate, you take a deep breath, and then you draw. Other kinds of calligraphy, court calligraphy, was much more a matter of knowing how the characters are meant to be formed and bringing that to mind as you slowly write each character. So even with a background of calligraphy to painting, there are different ways of painting within the Chinese tradition. So all of these things are philosophical, but not exclusively philosophical, and can give some insight in how yin and yang work. And then with regard to gender, I think the idea of yin and yang being collaborative, you couldn't just have yang and not yin, and you can't just have yin, not yang. Of course, they're identified in gender terms, but that isn't something, is the end of the matter. And certainly in the 20th century, there have been people who want to talk about the notion of the virtues, like Ren, the principal virtue of humanity, being available to women and men equally. And that even before the 20th century, there were moves in Chinese thought and Chinese social organization, which gave some women warriors, male characteristics, and some men who, say, played in a traditional opera female roles, a female presence. So again, ambiguity seems to me more important than fixing once and for all masculinity and femininity, or yin and yang, as if they were concepts. And I'll just finish by saying that yin and yang are related to Tao, the Tao of heaven and the Tao of earth. And the question is a matter of controversy, is whether human Tao is just a projection of that, or there's a separate notion of human Tao which completes the Tao of nature, the Tao of heaven and Tao of earth. And these are still controversies today amongst commentators of how we understand Tao as an underlying notion in Chinese thought, whatever the school.
Yes. Yeah, just to follow up what Nick has just pointed out, that masculinity and femininity within the Chinese tradition of art and philosophy have been very complicated, and different philosophers and artists disagree with one another. For instance, like Billy has mentioned, the Tao Te Ching has this portrait of femininity that's related with vulnerability, but then Lao Tzu is very tricky in that he plays with vulnerability. He says that a child is the most vulnerable person or thing in the world, but then it's also the most vibrant life you can ever imagine on earth. So compared to a dead corpus, which looks very hard and solid and strong, but is actually dead inside and useless and motionless. And he also compares traditional 5 elements of the water, fire, metal, wood, and mud. Earth. Associate those elements with yin and yang. For instance, the most typical one is water. He says water is the utmost good. But also water is the most soft and invisible and almost, non-present being in this world. And if you look at water, we have a lot of Chinese 4-character phrases that describe the strength of the water. 滴水穿石, how dropping drops of water and can actually pierce through a stone. And on the other hand, you look at the fire as representing masculinity, motion, action, aggression, destruction. And a lot of the Taoist texts were trying to talk about yang that is manifested outside of your body, could be something that represents a decline in health. Just like if we look at a fire, when it's very hot outside, if you touch the heart or the central point within the fire, it's actually the coldest point. It's without any high temperature. So that also shows that in some point in the middle of that thing or form of life that exists, that is evidently or majoritively composed by the yang element, it definitely has a point where this element no longer persists as the strongest form of existence and turns into its reverse. the opposite. So relating back to what Leilei has said, that yin and yang can reverse. And Michelle has commented how the yin and yang are reversed, indeed, in some forms of even musical or visual arts. So I do think that traditionally speaking, Lao Tzu and some other Chinese philosophers also play with the reversibility of yin yang, and contemporary artists also play with it. So I don't see any hindrance in applying the yin yang to contemporary arts at all. But then, of course, there are Neo-Confucians such as Dong Zhongshu, who would say that, oh, the motherly is the absurd, the base, the lowly. But then, if you look at Dong Zhongshu's work, 春秋繁露, the early dew in spring and autumn, you see how his social structures and institutionalization of marriage and sexual intercourses ordered by the state is actually interfering with seasonal changes, and how agricultural development would be, how those sectors could be influenced by the human activities, especially how the yin and the yang energy interacted with one another. That can have a backfire or an impact that feeds back into the universal cosmological order. And so I would say subconsciously, Dong Zhongshu could be a feminist in that if the women say no in bed, then the state will collapse.
Okay. Well then, if we, so what I'd like to ask first is if anyone on the panel has any questions for each other, and if not, then we can open up to the audience. Yeah. So, does anyone have a question? And if not,
Yes.
It's a question for everyone here, I guess.
Could you speak up, please?
Yeah. Would you just talk a little more about yin yang in art and how maybe it relates to chiaroscuro, whether these concepts are interlinked? Because I think that's something that's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in general, I think in terms of contrast or relationships in whatever I do. I think curatorially, particularly, I think that really is a strong thread in my brain all the time. So with the idea of the chiaroscuro, I brought it up because, of course, we were talking about light and darkness, and of course, in the painting that exists intrinsically. And in your painting and in your inks, particularly, you could see that the contrast between light and dark is what made the painting, and the idea of space as opposed to something that is already there. Of course, if I talk about chiaroscuro, I'm from Malta, so we have the largest Caravaggio in the world, the only silent Caravaggio in the world, so of course there's an element of that for me. But my recent exhibition was actually a call for artists inspired by chiaroscuro, and it was an absolute diversity of reactions to or inspirations by chiaroscuro, because you can take it anywhere. But I do believe that there is an element of, as I said before, there's an element of constant relationship between one thing and the other, whatever those two might be. Over here we spoke about quite a few, lots of interesting things, and I was very pleased about the fact that music is one of the highest art forms. Of course, music you can't. So I love all the arts, but many arts you have to go somewhere and look at it, for example. Whereas music comes inside you whether you like it or not, unless you have unless you're wearing earplugs. So I think there's something quite special there. Just like architecture, you're in a space, so you are in the space, which could be one side of yin and yang, and then you have the structure around it, which could be the other. So I think we can see that in all types of art forms, and I think it is important rather, to recognize both in whatever we do. I don't know if that answers your question, but there is definitely a relationship between yin and yang and chiaroscuro and the way people do. So even if we think of other philosophies and other ways of belief and stuff. The idea of light and candle and staying last, light coming through against the darkness. There's just so many ways in which one can interpret things, I think.
I was gonna ask Leilei what you think about the relationship between traditional conceptualizations, perhaps of ink painting as in terms of yin and yang, in terms of light and dark, but also emptiness and fullness, but also movement and stillness, and how that then relates to the chiaroscuro tradition as it's introduced into
Yeah, thank you. As a painter, I first considered what I want to say, what I want to show. And secondly, in which way I can say the best. So is that a yin and yang or not? That can be. One thing is two sides, right? I wish you might realize the one picture of Captain Tom Moore. Did you see that picture? Yeah, because that painting. Sorry.
Do you want me to?
You want to show it? Yeah, great. It makes more sense. Because I would think just now I mentioned about the particular relationship between heart and the history. That is a time-wise relationship. Yeah, and between the human and the individual and the human being, that is the space part. It's still got a relation. Yeah, if you see these two pictures, that's actually is the same way I did. But this is, I don't know how, just naturally become that way. I want to show him, I want to paint him very touched. I want to paint him also very touched. That's during the pandemic. I hope everybody knows he called Li Wenliang, the first whistleblower. And if government listen to him, can save millions of people's life. 2 weeks. Yeah. So in some stage when I mount the picture, I mount the wrong way. I see background. Oh, background was quite interesting. Then I painted him in the back of the picture. And the super realistic visual put on the front. He already in the next world, a different world. That's certainly not beyond the yinyang or the yinyang, right? But it's still very sincere look at this world. And Captain Moore as well, I use the same way. I paint him on the side, back of the picture. And because the xuanzhi is very thin and the mystery comes through. Yeah, in the real life, he keep working to collect the money for NHS for 30 million. And he's in a different world, but still very kindly look at us. That's what I want to show. Which way I can show better? I think probably this way. I find a way. It's not bad. Apart from that, you see some picture, I want to see if the bright body against dark background or bright body against the bright background. That will be different. Yeah. Next one. Just one. So come back. Yeah. That one also pandemic. No. Next one. Han.
the previous one.
That one. Yeah. I paint up. There's a glass beside the glass, two worlds. We all experience that, right? And the father or doctor's hand in the other side of the glass. Is that called yin yang? Oh, can be. Yeah, everything can be explained by yin yang, right?
Relationship.
Relationship. That's what I'm concerned.
Yeah.
This one. Yeah.
Because Leilei has mentioned the whistleblower Li Wenliang. He was the first doctor in Wuhan that has warned about the capacity of COVID, and he died because of COVID. And just now, Leilei mentioned that he went to the other world, and that other world in Chinese could be translated into yin jian.
Yang
So
jian,
the
yeah.
yin world is those
Yang world.
but belonging to those who have already gone and departed from this world, which is the yang world.
Yeah,
and we are all
exactly.
young people. And when we say that
But all young people very touched by the yin.
exactly,
Yang
so
people.
yin and yang are always intertwined. And with this photo, this painting there, if I have heard so many times that people have talked about their dead old grandpa or parents, they say that yin yang xiangge. So I'm in the yang side, and my grandpa or my father is in the yin side, which means the dark, the invisible, the absurd world that has no longer in some way still in touch with us, but we can no longer see. So that is the metaphysical connotation of yin yang. The yang is the most like vivid, active, and motionful world, whereas the yin would be the other world. And a very interesting joke that I've always told my friend about yin and yang is in China, especially during the pandemic, when we say we were tested positive, we say 我阳了. When we were tested negative, we say I was yin. So that is another evident proof that actually negativity and positivity in some way could be, but we don't want positivity in this case, right? So the Chinese somehow relate positivity with something that's not positive, and negativity with something that would definitely would want to see as a result of our test. So I think that is another play of the Chinese language or the Chinese people's thinking pattern that is subconsciously designed, not philosophically educated, and that's how powerful the concept is never so intentional. We unintentionally refer to those dualities.
Oh, great, beautiful. Yeah, well, let's see. Oh, this is a women condition, black hole. I don't know. It's not a yin yang pattern, but it's a modern science. So there are about 300,000 women just disappear. So you never find them, been kidnapped and so. Yeah, but that is another project. Let's go to another one. This war. War. Yeah. For example, this one is a male hand, right? Actually, it's my hand. Yeah. That's a talk about relationship between human and the natural world. But the underneath the idea is what I want to say is today and the future, can we stand in another angle higher, maybe God's angle, look at back or home? Yeah, either you put them together or you break it, right? And the next one, look, this is a female hand. The whole feeling I show is different. Yeah, this one more protection, more gentle. That's a little home floating in the space. Which but difficult to say. Another picture I want to say is the Empire building, about the Chinese culture and the background. Oh, that's a block down. There's a calligraphy. Yeah, this calligraphy is a opposite, right? Dark background. This is called the election vote. 选票. Yeah. That is the forest. That is you mentioned about the sound. Yeah, I mean, the people living condition, the installation, and the wood. The tree is dead, but the give wood a new life. They screaming. or they block the mouth, they can't scream, right? And these bowls, we alternatively hit by these bowls, whatever called yin and yang, politics, money, and information, right? And that's the idea of that project. This one, people ask why the terracotta warriors in white, white shadow. We got an expert here, Xie Xiaoqing, from the area, right? Because 221 BC in Chinese history is a line. Before we call the feudalist, afterwards we call the dictatorship, right? Or whatever. All history knowledge been misleading for many, many years. They say 5 cannot change the period. It's from Lenin and Stalin moved to China. In fact, China's history is not like that. China, his feudalist system finished at 2021 BC. From then become a super dictator through the huge official system control the Jun Xianzhi and the provinces. From then until today, nothing changed. Yeah, we have a very, very, very interesting word. We always say everywhere, old China is half, Jimmy,
semi-colonial.
Semi-colonial, semi-feudalist. It's not. We should say semi-colonial, semi-dictatorship. Yeah, that's more correct because it's not a feudalist anymore. 对 不封建国，你知道 ？So Qin very short. However, Qin set up the whole structure, Chinese structure. Historically proved it worked. The whole for more than 2,000 years, nothing changes. Before it didn't work. Before work certain period, and then have a war broken and united again. That's why China history turned around 300 circle. Yeah, and 100 years transition, and another 300 years, another 100 years. Yeah, that is the Chinese history. But this is why it change, but underneath nothing changes. Qin system, 百代秦制 was 100 generations by the Qin system. Qin system never changes because it's standardized. Everything standardized. The language, the measurement, etc. is and thought. You can only have one thought. These things continuing today. But the reason I say we're misleading is because the recent years they find massive of Qin bamboo strip books from Hong Kong and Tsinghua University. The graduates they find it and bought all and donated to Tsinghua, also called the Tsinghua Jian or Qinjian. Very detailed record what Qin dynasty is about, all the system. Chen Sheng Wu Guang, if they arrive there or not arrive, they won't kill. Very clearly record. We have to study it again. This is why I choose a few Qinjian paint on there. This is yin and yang. It is a invisible power, but dominated this big land. This 1.4 billion people. That's what I want to say. But I did the whole theory of that. Just research, rethink our history and the culture. Yeah.
And if it's okay, I would like to follow up that point on calligraphy and seal scripts that's frequently appearing in Leilei's work, because I think that you refer to earlier literati paintings in China and say that Michael Sullivan actually made a joke about how you were the modern literati Chinese painter because of the usage of calligraphy. And I know that Billy is very interested in calligraphy and painting. He actually had just a workshop on that. And with poetry as well. So calligraphy is not just beautiful words. It tells something. It has meaning.
I find a picture. You carry on.
I just wonder
Yeah.
Whether both of you would agree that whenever those calligraphy appear on a painting, it's got as much as symbolic, aesthetic, and iconographic meaning. Which means, do you think that you put it there just because the symbols look beautiful and suit the painting very well, or does it really say something that you were trying to express? I think that Billy has worked closely with some of the works that use symbolic, iconographic expressions of the yinyang. I think from Zhang Yi in Hong Kong this summer in contemporary in the Contemporary Gallery at the Ashmolean Museum, and we had a discussion about whether the yinyang has influenced the artist's paintings or not, especially the meaning of yin yang and those characters that he put into his work. And Leilei also, the calligraphy, does it have a meaning?
Yeah, for example, this one, people ask what it is. It's a sort of fragmentation. Yes, it is a fragmentation. Yeah, we can see here, maybe you can see a little bit, but however, carry on the pieces, you can't read anything. That is calligraphy. Calligraphy, firstly, is carry the message, right? And if we can't read anything, but maybe we call it abstract painting. Yeah, but calligraphy. But however, in a contemporary interpreter, that is a part of the whole forest, the misinformation. This is one of them.
It's also trivial collages, right?
Yeah, collage.
There's a play between what can be read.
Exactly. There's a collage. Got a few pieces in the museum, right? Yeah. That is probably more inspired by the Cultural Revolution. So many stone carvings and the broken. Yeah, everywhere we can see that we call the 断碑残简. Yeah, but however, put them together with different color, it's more than hard.
And is there also an element of those where, because there's in another way that they reference the Cultural Revolution, I thought that in the installation that you showed before as well, there's sort of a bit of a reference maybe to the dance of the bar.
That's about, yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Because I did the similar period when the large one and the smaller one. Yeah, that time just still, I do a lot of calligraphy, prepare different surfaces like a bronze, like a wooden, like a earth, like etc., and tear them in pieces, and then arrange the composition. Didn't quite think of what is the yin, what is the yang. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, more think about what I want to say, how to say it good.
Yes. Yes. So
there was an exhibition of contemporary art in Oxford, but elsewhere as well, where one artist had calligraphy, what looked like calligraphy, but all the characters were noun characters, beautifully written.
Oh, that's Xu Bing.
And
Xu Bing,
also
Gu Wenda,
was
there's a few.
the unintelligibility or misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Which, in some ways, is kind of a response to 20th century's ideas about language as well.
Yeah, this strip is a similar type of a bamboo strip, quite long, but 4 meters long. But also the text are George Orwell.
yes.
Yeah.
What does it say?
To say what is思想? What is the truth? The truth is breaking pieces, and according they want, they make in the new shape. Yeah. The other one is Kasparov. All about this information thing. Yeah, and this is more like a yin and yang, because that time, the what the time is Trump what next Biden, right? That's quite a match time.
2000.
Yeah, the vote. You don't know which one is truth, which one is bad. But these two characters, old character called 选票, the vote 选票. And I can't find the image. Another image out here. 如果是 on the somewhere. Oh, 口罩 here. This behind that. Yeah, the face mark, and another code is cover the mouth. This is black against white. This white against black. Because that time in Hong Kong, in one period, you wear a mask is illegal. And the next period, you don't wear the mask is illegal. So 口罩 and 罩口 just to make it black and white. Yeah.
Can I ask about this? So
Installation.
This is an installation.
This is in the Milan Royal Palace Museum, called Information Forest. All about is the information, the truth. The 三人成虎，乱，还有口罩，还有那个什么指鹿为马，which means now whole world facing the big problem is the information crisis. Yes, the massive 泛滥. How to say 泛滥? 信息泛滥.
Flooding.
Flooding information, and fragmentation information, fake information, and the internet fraud, etc., etc. The whole world. But this is not a new thing. Now it's just too extreme. It's a very old thing. For example, the 指鹿为马, the point deer as a horse, shows how political power can change the fact. Everybody know the story, right? In the Qin dynasty, 2000, more than 2,000 years ago, and the Prime Minister Zhao Gao want to show how powerful he is, and he asked someone take a deer into the court, and he said, "Oh, what a beautiful horse!" And other people said, "You actually this is a deer. Take it out and chop head. Whoever says deer lost a head." And later on, nobody can say anything. And some people say, "Oh yes, it's a beautiful horse." This is political power can change the fact.
Yes.
And another one called 三人成虎. Yeah. Again in the court, someone running in and said, "Oh, disaster! There's a tiger on the street." And they say, "Oh, everybody laugh at him. How could be a tiger on the street?" And after a little while, the second man running in, this tiger, very near, come to our palace, come to our court. And the people start worrying. And then third person comes and say, "Okay, tiger just outside of the door." Everybody standing up and run away. Just one fake, repeat, become the truth. There are a lot of this. And this ball, unfortunately, the ball too small because I originally planned a meter high big ball, reflective. When the people walk around, all of those informations and themselves change the shape, the mix up in the ball. That is the project.
And so I guess the last question then, wrap up. Thinking about your work as on, so this is a 3D
installation.
But you also, so how does working in that medium, in 3D, also in sculpture, how does that relate to your practice working?
I do the design. They make a sculpting. I do it on the floor. I do it on the floor. You can see one of the pictures. The 4 meter long. Yeah, all of that same size, similar size. Yeah, and put it like forest, let people can wandering around. You know. And all got the translation beside which panels, what are the meanings. This is if the calligraphy doesn't pass the message, it's not a calligraphy. Yeah, and but what I want to do is from the most ancient the art form concern the most contemporary issues. Yeah, to thank you.
Well, I would like to thank everybody for their time, Nick, Manhua, Michelle, and especially to Leilei and all you. And I hope everyone has a nice evening. And unless you'd like to have a final word.
Thank you everyone for participating in this, and we're so honored to have this conversation together with you tonight. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm going to research you properly now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, you didn't ask my
Too
answer my
short
question.
Too short
I
time.
try.
Yes.
I try to
So
where
are you based in
in
Oxford? In London?
In London, Wimbledon.
And
Live in Wimbledon.
And your work is all over the world?
Sort of.
So if I don't know, I'm just thinking, like, if we, is there a possibility to get some of your work to Oxford and do an exhibition?